As part of our meditation this evening, these words from a great Taoist master, a poet, Seng San, and he lived in the 1st century. For the mind in harmony with the Tao, all selfishness disappears. For the mind in harmony with the Tao, all selfishness disappears. With not even a trace of self-doubt, you can trust the universe completely. All at once you are free, with nothing left to hold on to. All at once you are free, with nothing left to hold on to. All is empty. All is brilliant, perfect in its own being. The enlightened of all times and places have entered into this truth. In this truth, there is no gain, no loss. One instant is 10,000 years. There is no here, there is no there. Infinity is right before your eyes. That infinity is the state of meditation. Meditation cannot be practiced. It can only be revealed as our natural state. So let's all take these moments, letting all things of time and space, all names, all forms, drop away, so we can be in direct contact with that which we truly are. If you watch CNN for any period of time, it's enough to find yourself discouraged. The world seems to be in a state of contraction. We know that every state of contraction is followed by an opening, but when you're in the midst of the fire, when it's your world on fire, it's hard to understand the importance of transcending the world of time and space Not completely, but just so that you can get a little perspective, a little more balance in your life. Gurdjieff watched CNN much of his time because it was his way keeping track of the world so that he would understand more of the people he was serving. After a while, those steps are going to feel very hard. Wouldn't you rather sit in a chair? We have chairs. No problem. It's only my life that interrupts. Some who understand that know what I'm talking. We watched Sri Brahmananda as he watched the world through CNN or heard about it through us. And we would watch his face mirror the tragedies. That's all right. Bharati, you say, but I love Bharati. She didn't do that. But she said, I'm sorry for it. Please continue, yes. Now, I love to watch Bharati. Bharati, even when she's righting a wrong, her body is very graceful, like a dancer. It's true. So I was saying that I became acutely aware as I watched Sri Brahmananda during the years. Remember, this ashram was founded in the 60s, and there was a lot going on in the 60s. The world also seemed to be totally out of order. And Gurdjieff would watch CNN, and as I was saying, his face would mirror the pain and the suffering that he saw revealed there. But I also saw how quickly he moved into the next moment, taking delight in even a flower that was handed to him. And what was that? I wondered about that. Then he would speak on the topic that only an enlightened being could describe as the description that cannot be described. And I said to myself, he speaks in such a way that there's no question. He sees the world from a different viewpoint. He sees it from that of an enlightened viewpoint. So when he speaks these words, you have to realize, as I did, as everybody did, listening to him, that these words did not come from a book. They did not come from others' descriptions. He couldn't speak that way. He said that about Ramana Maharshi when I asked, was he fully enlightened? His answer was he couldn't speak that way if he were not. Who but an enlightened master could say this first statement? If you come upon it, the experience of pure consciousness is something marvelous. Who could say that? Is that secondhand? Did he say, I saw that on page 192? That it's something marvelous? Not the way he said it. But notice he says, if you come upon it. If you come upon it. Not if you've attained it. Not if you've achieved it. Not if you have disciplined yourself so that it is bestowed upon you. He says, no. If you come upon it accidentally. That's what he's saying. If you come upon it. Just 4, 5 words. If you come upon it. which means it will be a surprise. Right? If you come upon it unexpectedly. If you come upon it and the mind is not in the way of that surprise, the experience of pure consciousness, he doesn't say must be, he said is something marvelous. What does that tell you about him? He experienced it. He did come upon it. That's how he could talk about it. Because the description is not the described. In other words, he would like to describe it for you. But because the description is not the described, this is Krishnamurti's viewpoint as well. The description is never the described. Because it's not the described, it means that you yourself have to go into it. You cannot be satisfied with second-hand testimony. You have to go through it. It has to be yours. In Gurdjieff's famous words, someone else's resurrection cannot be your resurrection. Consciousness, in case we didn't know this, consciousness is freedom. That's pure consciousness. Pure consciousness makes you independent and integral. It is the state of perfection that all mystics wish to attain and which the Vedas describe as not this, not that. Famous answer to a question in the scriptures, in the Vedas. What is that by knowing which everything is known? And the answer is given in Sanskrit, neti, neti. Not this, not this. It could have gone on. Neti, 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 neti. Not this, not this, not this. Not anything you can refer to or point to. It is the state of perfection that all mystics wish to attain, and which the Vedas describe as not this, not that. Anything that you can imagine, anything you can think of, anything you can point to, no. It is beyond the state of the senses, the mind, and the intellect. This is why I mention it in the afternoon, although in the beginning of our study with him, he kept giving us book after book, having us read book after book. And years went by and we really began to love reading. We loved to read, especially books on spiritual topics. And then one day he would tell some of us, he would point and say, now, and it was usually the people who loved reading the most, now you put the books down. Now you are the book. You have become the book. Wasn't until years later. You have still some years to go. You can enjoy the books. But it was fascinating that as soon as some of us really began to rely on the books, to escape into the books, that's when he said, no, you put all books down. Now maybe you should cook or you be housekeepers now. Something. But as he just said, because it can't be described, we have to go through it. It has to be our direct experience. And then he says this, after first feeling and understanding God, then and then alone can we experience his omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence. Otherwise, not. I know some of you saying, what a strange statement. After we feel and understand God, What does he mean by that phrase? It stopped me. I've read this so many times. This is from some of his statements in Keys, in a booklet entitled Keys to Nirvana Tantram. And I came across that statement. I thought I'd read this little booklet carefully, but I stopped. Each time we read something, we bring to it a different level of understanding, different maturity. Would you like to know what Gurji defined as maturity? Adaptability. Isn't that wonderful? But when we bring to a reading that we've read and are familiar with a new understanding, it means we're able to adapt more to the lessons that our life is bringing. So, your understanding is as worthwhile as mine. I had my sense of what he was saying, but it's good to bring your response to that. He says, first we have to feel and understand God. Then, and then alone, can we experience his omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence. Otherwise not. We can never experience that this consciousness is omnipresent. This consciousness represents all knowingness. This consciousness is equated with full power, omnipotence. We need nothing more than that. So what does he mean? After first feeling and understanding God, then we can experience omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. Come on, be brave. I'm very brave just to sit in this chair. Because, I take my chances. I know how ancient you are and how all of you know this on some deep level, as much as I know, or as much as the great sages know. So you do take a chance. So be brave. What could it mean? It's so wonderful to play with those words. How do you feel, God?
Feel it inside you. Feel it inside you.
Yeah, so when is that possible? She said to feel it inside you. When you feel it inside you, that's how you feel God, inside you. But how does that happen? When you need it? A lot of people would disagree, but I know it happens when I need it. But there are some people, they've been looking for that feeling that God is with them. And yet you see how panicky people are in the Gulf. There's panic. All people who have been religious, going to church, enjoying the good life of Florida, that whole area, because it's the good life down there. Why are they in such a panic if everything is God's will, as they hear in church?
They don't trust it.
Why is it that now they're not trusting it? They trust in the good times. They feel protected. But it's very hard when times are not so good to still feel that protection, no matter what. And there's only one way to do it. You said the word. Through meditation. Because in meditation, we get it from the testimony of the great masters. We are in direct contact with our inner teacher, a Sadguru, who is God itself. That's the godliness. Not some, figure that's up there or down here. No. You can feel protection. You can feel unconditional love. When we have gone to the depths of despair, I know a secret about you, because I've been listening to you, others like you, and others like me for many years now. And I hear the same story, that at some point in their lives, and I know in your lives, you hit despair. Anyone brave enough to raise your hand and tell me? Yes? Oh, see? Almost the whole room. I know. And some of you didn't recognize it as despair. Oh, that you mean? I just thought that was a bad period in my life. No. There comes a point where that feeling of abandonment by the universe, by God, by the cosmos, is so powerful that you're this close to ending it all, which wouldn't do any good anyway, because you come back and have to go through it again because you missed the message of that bad period. This is what we learned. No point. One time, somebody came up to Gurji in the middle of a program he was giving in New York. I shouldn't laugh. It was a sad moment in a way. But you'll laugh too. And a man in a naval uniform burst into the room. He was in New York City. And apparently the girl he was in love with had refused him and said that it was, she called him Dr. Mishra, Sri Brahmananda's influence, she told Navy man. She said, later on we'll be all right, but not now. And he burst in and he came up to Sri Brahmananda and said, I want to see you. I want to see you. I must see you now. And Guruji said, well, you can wait until that. No, now. If you don't see me now, I'm going to commit suicide tonight. And Guruji said, again? We went. And it was that Guruji had that power. He knew the past and the future. And he knew, he saw that every lifetime it was the same thing over the same young woman. Kept committing suicide. And so his word was, again? And the sailor was stupefied, what? And then he called on me. He said, take him outside, set up appointment for later, which we did. But that word, again, anyone who had doubts about reincarnation, hearing that word again from Guruji, it was staggering, astonishing. But it filled in a lot of gaps in the doubts I had had. So it is only when the mind drops away that we can feel our total connection with our origin. Our origin is pure consciousness. And we return to that. It's like a wave comes out of the ocean. We are the waves that come out of the ocean. But when the wave has begun to withdraw, we see it disappearing back into that ocean of consciousness. That's how it feels in the transition between one incarnation to the next one. It's just the feeling of consciousness moving on to another embodiment or to another level. How do I know this? Not that I know what he knows, not that I've had that direct experience, but he's told us. Now, everything that comes from me is from what he has told. You sit 30 years and you love what you're listening to. If you don't love what you're listening to, you forget it within seconds, right? But if you love it, if you love somebody, you remember everything that person has said to you. If you don't love someone, like your third grade teacher, yeah, it's gone. But usually the teachers you love, you tend to remember what they told you. You don't forget. So I'm just repeating. And if you're feeling the conviction and the intensity and the excitement, it's because that's still alive in all of us. Anytime we read this language, after first feeling, all right, feeling we can understand through meditation, we have that direct connection. But he said, understanding God. What does that mean? Understanding God. That's a tall order, isn't it? But he said, first we have to feel and understand God. I'll help, because I think if Gurji had added a few words, which I'm always reluctant to do, I don't like to touch his writing just for clarification's sake. If you add this, after first feeling and understanding God as he really is, or God and his relationship to us, then it would mean something different. Because now we think of God as something far away, distant, that we have to reach someday. We have to come into contact ultimately with God in heaven. Many religions teach that. We get to heaven, we'll be greeted by St. Peter or God within. Somehow, Gurji said that's a very dry story. He'd rather have his own story, which is to meet God whenever he wants to, not have to wait so long. So, when can we know God as God truly is? Not the man-made description. There is no description of God. There shouldn't be. Well, who's going to describe him? If you can describe him, then you have to know him. If you know him, there's nobody left to describe him. Right? So, understanding God as he is. Somebody tell me, how do you understand God? As far away or as something else? What is your feeling? Anthony, you're my new friend, and Mindy. I know Anthony, by the way, fell in love with Gurji through his fundamentals of yoga. Never met him, right? You never met him. He's in love with him because he read fundamentals of yoga and it never left him. So Anthony, you remember?
Real experience. You have to, it's got to be a real experience, just like breathing or sunshine. You've got to have that, otherwise it's not.
It has to be your real experience. But what does it mean to you? Do you feel you understand that experience? It's nice you put it that way. You have to have that experience. Do you feel you understand why it was so astonishing?
Well, it's just all suffering ends, and it's just blissful.
It's just that all suffering ends. And it's just that it's blissful. Now I know you've had the experience. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like when pain stops. Excruciating pain stops. Can you imagine that? But that's knowing God, understanding what God is. You could put it in the negative. God is when pain stops. I've never said that before. But apparently that needed to be said, and Anthony, thank you. You brought it out. Here's just one little phrase of Gurji's. After first feeling and understanding God as godliness that resides according to the enlightened ones, that godliness resides in us, but we need to be aware of it. It's the awareness that's missing. And for the awareness, now you tell me, I said it last week to some of the teachers in training. Remember what I said? What should you do every day while you're here? Take a walk by yourselves so you could be in communion with the deepest part of you, so you could taste the aloneness. And I also said, talk to one another. I don't want you to miss this lovely company. Every time I talk to Yogananda, he keeps telling me this is an amazing group of people. So you shouldn't miss one another, but you shouldn't miss being with yourself either. So that awareness of what Anthony spoke about, we may be blissfully happy, we may be pain-free, but we're so busy telling people about it, we lose it, we miss it. It has to become so familiar to us that we can't do without it. We must have it at least a little part of the day. That's what Gurdjieff meant when he said, go towards meditation with the same enthusiasm that you go towards your bed after a physically exhausting day. You know how you run to bed? Well, that's how we should run to meditation, so that the pain that's around us, within us, can drop away. He says, we know consciousness, ordinary people, or when we're in our ordinary state, then we know consciousness only in 3 planes. We know physical consciousness, we know dream consciousness, and we know deep sleep consciousness. At least we can refer to it as the 3rd state. We know all 3, but that's because we're still living in the image of the individual self, which is called ego, or individual soul. He's saying we can recognize those 3 different planes of consciousness, but that's because we're living as the individual I. However, this is the final paragraph of this excerpt. However, it is the Turiya state, the 4th state, or the integral state of consciousness, which is Sat Chit Ananda. That's the total existence, Sat, total knowledge or knowingness, and the total bliss, complete bliss. That's the Turiya state. That is one's own self. He's saying not the separate states, not even deep deep sleep consciousness, although that gives us the closest taste of the samadhi state, which is cognitive trance. It's cognitive, we're aware of it, but we're not aware in deep sleep. Only the gurus can be. But mind you what it says, the 4th state, Turiya state, or the integral, combining everything state of consciousness, that is your true, real self. For here, the mind will discover things that are incredible. The only reason those words affected you by the way I spoke them is because I remembered. I could hear his voice and I could see his face. You can trust that if he wrote that, remember he began by saying, if you come upon it, the experience of pure consciousness is something, what? Marvelous. Marvelous. And he ends with, in that state, the Turiya state, the mind will discover things that are incredible. When he spoke, we couldn't wait. And he would say, come on, get on my rocket ship. It's going to Turiya. Non-stop. Problem is, once you get on, you can't get off. Very dangerous to try and get off. But you can reach within a matter of no time. But you have to trust the pilot. He said, on my rocket ship, which meant he was the pilot, the one and only pilot. Trust really means taking a chance. You took a chance. You came to this ashram for 1 month. You didn't know if you'd like it. You didn't know if we'd return you money. You didn't know that. But we knew you would never ask. Because we had full trust in this place. Full trust that the Guru's presence, the Guru's wisdom, the Guru's power would make this an experience that was incredible. Indescribable. You'll see, you'll try to describe it to your family members. It's not possible. You cannot describe this. You can only be it. You can only be this ashram when you move out there. They'll see it on your face. They'll feel it in the change that has occurred. This afternoon, a lovely young mother brought her 2 girls, age, both of them, there's a year between them, 10 and a half and 11 and a half. And I asked them directly, very bright, very precocious children, girls, I said to them, have you noticed a change? I knew there was a big change in their mothers, so I could ask. I said, did you notice any change in your mother since she started meditating? So they both did a slow turn, and then they came back and said, I said, what does that mean? Is she nicer? Is she sweeter to you? Is she more understanding? They went, yes. It usually happens with children. First, they don't want their parents to meditate because it feels like abandonment to them, rejection. It feels as though their parents have gone away to a place they can't go. But after a while, anytime the mother or father has had a bad day and is crabby, the children tell them to meditate. They tell them they haven't gone to the ashram, they should go. Because they see the difference. And that's the best, it's the best invitation to meditation. They may not do it right away, but they'll remember that some change occurs when you meditate. They see it. I always tell parents, don't insist that your children meditate. Just you meditate. And they'll see that you're different after meditation. You have to be the role model for them. So, again, it's from the booklet Nirvana Tantram, which are different statements of Guruji. Anybody want to ask a question? About what you heard? Okay. It's the common experience that when we hear something very profound, as Guruji's writings, words always are, that the questions don't come now. They come later. Because why is that? It's very clear to me. Why is that our questions, and I'm talking about ourselves too. When we were listening to Guruji, he said any questions, he hardly ever asked if there were any questions, because he didn't expect there to be. Why not? Because we're not listening with the mind. The mind isn't taking this in. The mind is just hearing each sentence, each word, and the mind is going, what? because this is too vast for the little mind to take in. This isn't something you remember, you record. This is something that reveals your own knowledge to you. So all you can say is, ah, good. And then later try to remember it. No. Doesn't happen that way. The mind cannot respond to this. The heart can. And it's, see where I'm pointing? I'm not pointing here. It's not that I had a heart transplant. This is the heart center. Some of you said, that's where her heart is? That's the hridayam. That's the heart center where you feel your beingness. That's where you feel it. Sometimes this is so beautiful, coming back to your own knowledge, that it brings tears. It hurts. How many of you are on Facebook? Raise your hand. Our own friend Subramanya has a video on there of, I think it's called We Are the World. Is that, there's such a thing? We Are the World? Song? We Are the World? From the 90s. Well, a group of children and his own little daughter Maya is part of this group. They got together with two guitarists and they are singing solos on We Are the World. I never watched this, but since it was Subramanya's daughter Maya, whom I love, and he said, watch this, Maya is singing. So I put it on, it's only 3 minutes. When you get home, all the teachers, you listen to it. Because I don't spend any time on Facebook. It's too overwhelming for me. But I saw this right on the news feed or something. And I listened, and by the end of it, I was crying. I was crying to hear these innocent voices so full of feeling and passion and caring about what they were saying. You could see it. They sang it with all of their heart. Very moving. So the mind can't enter there. The heart has to enter. And that's why if you feel happy after any of your classes here, any of your asana classes or Gita classes or scriptural classes, but really don't remember too much of what was said, but you're happy, mission accomplished. Because it means we've succeeded in returning you back through these classes, through these programs, through this ashram, back to your origin. And once you go back at this point in your life, it's very hard to leave it again. This has become your real reality. So take a deep breath. And now as you breathe out, release all the language, all the words. This will only be 60 seconds. So feel yourself letting go and opening up to this now. Feeling it, perceiving it, imbibing it. Sometimes it only takes 1 minute to reconnect with your real life, your real home. I am that I am. That is our home. Krishna Devi, would you lead us in our traditional prayer?
Thank you, Krishna Devi. And if some of you are feeling very high, that you may need a designated driver, take 2 cookies. Chocolate chip is a great way to come back to earth.